Good afternoon. This is Representative Eric Mortensen out of Shakopee, District 55A, and ding dong, the masks are dead on the House floor after 3 weeks of defying the Speaker's ridiculous and anti-scientific mask mandate. The other night, she sent out a memo saying it's done, it's over. Of course, she strongly recommends them, and she says that the mask mandate is still in place for this building, the state office building, but the good news is the vast majority of the people that work in this building, they're not complying to that mask mandate. The vast majority have not been complying for months, quite honestly. So let that just be proof that the best way to take away power from tyrants is to simply ignore their orders. So I have to thank, there were two representatives that joined me in this eventually. Representative Paul Novotny eventually joined in for at least one day. And last Monday, just 3 days ago, State Representative Mike Sundin joined me on the House floor, although his was dangling, he had a mask dangling from his ear, but it was not covering his face. So I appreciate them standing up and refusing to comply to the Speaker's mask mandate. As you may or may not have heard, earlier this week, the new districts were issued by the courts. So my district, House 55A, has been redistricted into now House District 54A. There have been some subtle changes for House District 55A, now House District 54A. Louisville Township has been removed, and the vast majority of Jackson Township have been removed and thrown into the new District 54B. So anybody who might be confused as to which district they fall into now, we'll go ahead and we'll put a link in this video, and you can use that as a tool to click on and plug your address into and figure that out. As far as legislatively and policy that is making its way through the building, it's been pretty slow. We've only voted on one actual bill on the House floor, and it was a bill that just perpetuated this COVID fear. Unfortunately, only 8 people voted against that bill. I think they were all Republicans. But the vast majority of House Republicans voted for this bill, that one bill we've heard. And what it does is it provides workers' compensation for people who come down with COVID. And I voted against it because it's time to undo this COVID fear. We don't have workers' compensation programs for the flu. We don't have it for the cold. And essentially that's what this virus has become at this point. And I think it's time we start treating it as such, like other nations are throughout the world. But what I think you might find interesting is what came across my desk earlier this week. This is the state of Minnesota tax expenditure budget. And I just can't help but laugh. As you may recall, I laughed at this last year, what they considered an expenditure here at state government. This booklet, it says right in it, cost the taxpayers $135,000 to produce. And I'm sure it's not just this one specific booklet. But this report cost you $135,000. So that's essentially one full-time person in the state of Minnesota is being paid to produce this booklet. Now, for those who don't know what a tax expenditure is, because that is a very strange term to use in this scenario, what they're defining is tax revenue that the state does not receive. So the state considers revenue that it doesn't receive an expense. That seems very foreign to me because it doesn't really cost the state anything, but they put hundreds and hundreds of pages of detail in here, itemizing all of these different tax credits, all of these different tax deductions, and this massive complexity that is our tax code is comprised of, and just to determine how much money it's costing the state. Literally within the booklet, it defines that expenditure, and in that definition, I think one of the most important characteristics is they said it confers preferential treatment. And so here's some of the examples that I saw in this booklet. A film production credit. So if you're in the state of Minnesota, filming a movie. A taconite homestead credit. A bingo credit, only for certain organizations, not all bingo, but there's a bingo credit. Shipment of wine for personal consumption. And one of my personal favorites is a preferred athletic facility seating handout. So essentially that's a lot of words to say box seats. If you have box seats to the Wild game, you get preferred tax treatment. I think the people that can afford box seats at the Minnesota Wild probably don't need preferred tax treatment. And that's just a handful of the examples in this booklet. Now I think the actual solution here is instead of adding to the complexity of all these credits and all of these deductions is to just cut taxes. That's certainly one option that would make far more sense. Cut them across the board for everybody instead of creating these carve-outs for these little interest groups. Another solution is a bill I dropped on Monday. It's called the People Over Politicians Act. And what it does is it takes the politicians out of the process, because of course it's the politicians that are deciding what gets in this booklet. And it says, the charitable activity that you engage in as an individual is considered your state income tax having been paid. Lastly, I want to thank everybody who participated in my first legislative town hall for 2022. We'll try to do these on a monthly basis, and we'll try to mix it up, some virtual, some in person, and maybe, just maybe, do another Liberty Chat out at Murphy-Hanaran and do some hiking as spring comes along. So with that, remember, if you want to be politically respected, you must be politically feared.